Aujourd'hui, au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça?
Certainement dans les 10 années à venir.
Klaus Schwab. He's been one of my main targets.
Question and commentaire, questions and comments. The honourable member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has, quoted, infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know he was. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the.
When I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin, and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau.
In a speech, Castreau said, everywhere you looked on his island, you could see a Canadian cow. Apparently they worked very well, unlike a British fertilizer plant he bought, which he said was useless. Cuba's economy is based on sugar, and they want to sell more to Canada. But Castreau is not only fighting South Africans in Angola, he's fighting them on the world sugar market. Wherever the two men went throughout the island, the crowds flocked to Castreau, and Trudeau was obviously awed by his political style. Havana was once the Sin City of the Caribbean, where American tourists came by the thousands. It had more prostitutes than any other city in the world. Today, there are no more prostitutes and no Americans. But there are thousands of Canadian tourists. The Canadians come for a cheap holiday in the sun. They lie by the swimming pools, completely unconcerned that they are in a communist country. The Cubans love it. It brings them thousands of dollars.
This guy, he's the devil for sure. He's Darth Vader. So this one's the goal of the tyrant, Klaus Schwab, running the World Economic, it's supposed to be WEF Forum. Today at the end, so we are talking about chips that can be implanted. When will that be? Certainly in the next 10 years. And at first we will implant them in our clothes. Well, we already have them in our hands. And then we could imagine that we will implant them in our brains and in our skin. This guy is insane. I hate this guy so much. This guy's the devil. In the end, maybe there will be a direct communication between our brain and the digital world. What we see is a kind of fusion of this physical, digital, and biological world. Well, we call someone, we don't even have the reflex to take the device. It's done naturally. Technique continues to, I can't read all that. Yes, you talk and say, I want to be connected with anyone now. And first you have the personalized bots. And I saw that Mr. Something predicted that at the end of the year we'll have his robots. I'm guessing what he said. Because it cuts off there on the side. His personalized butler, robots. That is like in Downton Abbey. We will have our personal robot butler. Yes, but there's a difference. It is a servant that with artificial intelligence learns, and that is not only your assistant for manual work, sexual work too. But it can really be an intellectual partner of you. This is scary shit, man. That's scary shit right there. So he says it. This guy's the head of the World Economic Forum. And if you don't know who this guy is, don't, right? That video on its own is weird enough that this guy who's head of a lot of things, he's not like a household name, right? Like not everyone's talking about Klaus Schwab. People talk about Joe Brandon or Putin or, Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, or even Justin Castreau. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. This next video is going to blow your freaking minds. Canadian Parliament shuts down legit question about Trudeau being a Klaus Schwab plant, even though Schwab said this in public. And if you think this is BS, guess what it ain't. This is going to blow your freaking minds.
Question and commentaire, questions and comments. The honourable member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has quoted infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay, let's try again. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, that member was promoting open disinformation. That's not debate. We have to call out disinformation.
We'll get into debate again. The honourable member, questions and comments. The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm just thank you to my honourable colleague for her speech. I'd like to ask her specifically, because you talked about how this piece of legislation does not.
When I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more, half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. Mm-hmm. I'm with the president, who is a young global leader, but what is important?
Quite an amazing scene.
When Castro attended Trudeau's funeral in 2000, he and Justin Trudeau shared an emotional embrace.
Is it adding up yet? Is it adding up yet when you have Klaus Schwab talking about Agenda 2030 and wanting microchips in everyone by then in order to have artificial intelligence, and then you got Justin Castreau in Canada, and in the face of defiance against his people, he won't even talk to him because it's all about getting the jabs, the mandates, everything like that. It's all about that perspective. It's because it's coming down. It's rolling downhill to him. I think I've said this before. It's rolling downhill to this guy. And granted, this guy's evil as shit, Trudeau. Don't get me wrong. That's why he plays along with it. If he wasn't, he wouldn't. But we're starting to see the real people who are controlling the puppets. And who knows, Klaus Schwab might be a puppet for all I know. There might be some no-name up there, or unnamed person. I wouldn't say no name, but unnamed person, even above him, or even 3 steps above that we'll never know who they are, controlling all of this stuff going around as a shadow government, you know. If you don't add this all up together, I don't know what to tell you, because it's there. You can find it yourself. It's just easy to do the math. I'm not even good at numbers. I can do this math. It's pretty obvious what's going on. It's called the New World Order. That's what it's called.
President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I knows that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I'm with the president, who is a young global leader, but what is important?
Quite an amazing scene.
When Castro attended Trudeau's funeral in 2000, he and Justin Trudeau shared an emotional embrace.
Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
On appelle quelqu'un, on n'a même plus le réflexe de devoir prendre un appareil, ça se fait naturellement. Hein. La technique continue le corps.
Oui, vous parlez et vous dites, je veux maintenant être connecté avec n'importe qui. Et d'abord, vous avez les robots personnalisés. Et j'ai vu que M. Zuckerberg a prédit qu'à la fin de l'année, il va avoir son robot, son butler personnalisé qui est à sa disposition.
Donc, comme dans Downton Abbey, on aura son butler personnel, son serviteur, son esclave.
Oui, mais il y a une différence. C'est un serviteur qui, avec l'intelligence artificielle, apprend et qui n'est pas seulement votre assistant pour des travaux manuels, qui peut vraiment être un partenaire intellectuel de vous.